need to have some respect, and they appreciate not being beaten up and dented,
right.
Those kinds of things. And
right.
I agree. The other thing is that your reaction to these things. So you have a table. We talked about getting rid of things in our lives we don't need. I just gave away my dining room set because, I need to paint, so I don't have room for all of these things as I get bigger and bigger.
Right.
But if I'm sitting and looking at the dining room set and it's beaten up, well, that does something to you. We can be Buddhist enough that it's not important. Things are not important. On the other hand, we just talked about how you look at art. So basically, you look at something beautiful, something that has depth to it. You live longer. You have a chemical reaction. Well, what kind of a chemical reaction are you having in your body when everything around you is disheveled, when everything is beaten up or broken down?
Yes.
You are, in Feng Shui, you say, then you're beating yourself up and breaking yourself down, and you look like that.
Yes.
But it's true in the chemistry of our physical bodies, not to be all woo-woo juju about it. It's actually in the real world that if it's just the opposite. You're happy, you're getting good sex, or you're looking at a mountain view, or one of my fantastically exquisite paintings, and you have this wonderful chemical reaction that opens your heart, that expands your brain, that really relaxes your muscles, that really gets the blood to flow, that calms you down, that gives you, et cetera, et cetera. And then you are in a space where it's cluttered, it's beaten up, things are broken, or at least scratched and dented and stuff, and it doesn't have that effect on you. Now, of course, just the opposite. You go to Italy, you go to Venice, and everything is decaying. You go to, India, and the patina of age, of wear, it also becomes beautiful.
Yes.
But they haven't been disrespected.
Right. Very good.
There's a degeneration to these things.
That's right.
They're still there after thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years, because people love them, and that love then comes back to you. So it's very interesting, this respect for things, and I like how that you were saying, just the same thing. I think we need to have this in our lives. It's an important thing.
Well, yes, and what I'm experiencing here on my little ranch where I'm growing vegetables and restoring the property and walking the land like, trying to find the leprechauns in the trees, to reconnect with the spirit of things, and it seems to require disconnecting from the electrical grid, which is an interference wave, and I found myself just organically turning off lights, and then at night, when the natural light is on, sometimes I can now hear humming, and I think, what in the heck is causing that? And I'll start unplugging things, and eventually it seems like everything in the house ends up unplugged, like the television and the computer.
Right.
And then I get
I have no television in the house.
Oh, well, I'm moving mine out ASAP, except for one flat screen, so don't tell anybody.
No, I have a computer because, of course, it's necessary to us. But
right. At least now.
Unfortunately, it is. But
exactly, we're kind of temporarily logged into that. But I think we might be going to an internet, which is what this is all about in the first place, is reconnecting our senses so that we become much more sensitive and aware of not just our global footprint, which is stomping all over the world like it's a cigarette butt.
Right.
But the subtleties which the Hindus and the various ancient teachings tell us is within the life force and essence of everything, including the air we breathe. So literally everything is recording our vibration and our frequency. So as we change that, we become more sensitive. And I found that it took me 5 or 6 years living alone in the country with no street lights, overlooking the American River with pine trees and pine cones, pineals, all around me. And I was completely unconscious of them all until about, I'd say, yesterday. No, it's been fairly recent for me that I've been reconnecting with the joy and the essence of all things that I knew when I was a teenager climbing up the foothills of the Santa Barbara and sitting by a creek and just listening to the gurgle of the creek and tuning into the different sounds of the voices.
It is very interesting, and, once again, back to me and my sprays, but in case you haven't looked at the information, the radiation from Japan, from the nuclear reactor, is, and I'm just guessing at what I read because I don't, but it's like 300 times worse than Chernobyl, and is continuing, and they do not think it will be contained, not stopped, but contained for possibly another 50 years.
Oh.
That it is releasing several different types of radiation, each one separately in a tiny, 1 pound of radiation can destroy the whole planet. So what this is releasing into the air, into the food, into the water is happening and continues to happen. It's not on the news anymore. It's not.
No, it isn't.
It's not in the newspaper, and yet it continues, and it's getting worse, and the scientists that have been looking at this and speaking out are saying, Japan, but, the world scientists, you're not telling the truth. This is way worse than you expect. This plant can be uninhabitable indefinitely. So we'll be dead in a few years, but our children's 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 children will still not be, will still be affected by what we have done this year, today.
Well, what's even scarier than that, Roy, is that my own experience is that these new, as the sun is reaching its solar maximum, or somewhere around 2012, which ties into a lot of other things, but it's been shooting out some pretty intense flares and X class and M classes, and it has been impacting me personally, the land. And when I pulled the dishwasher rack open to unload it, I accidentally touched the spatula, which is made out of plastic, and I don't have hot water. I turn it down to save money. The edges of the entire spatula were melted, and I've noticed this with other plastics, that they're literally dissolving, and I suspect that it's from these solar flares and these intense invisible rays that are much more powerful than even the atomics that we've come up with to destroy ourselves.
Well,
so if that's true,
I think that is true. I think that, but I think there's a little bit more to it. In that, what happens is, just think of it as a beam of radiation, whatever form of radiation it is, which carries information. It's passing through all this pollution that we have in the atmosphere. You may not have as much where you are because you're in the beautiful country.
Well, we still have chemtrails overhead, excuse me.
Absolutely. And then, so it picks up that information. The sunlight itself is picking up the information of the pollution in the air and bringing that down onto us. And so that degenerates plastics, for one thing. That will accelerate aging because it dehydrates you. There are just so many things that happen. And that's what I was starting to say. My remedy, one of the very first ones I ever designed is called Radiation Cleanse, blessthebody.com Radiation Cleanse. And so, I never had a microwave. People give them to me to bring me into the, 20th century, and I give, right out the back door, I give them right away to someone else or, that doesn't care. But I have a cell phone, computer, and we have electricity in the house. You have a refrigerator. I use a razor, but people use electric razors or hair dryers. All of these electromagnetic fields are forms of radiation, and once you put it down, that doesn't mean that it's gone. Do you know what I mean? It's like if you hit your thumb with a hammer, just because you put the hammer down doesn't mean the pain stops.
Oh yeah.
And so this remedy is to correct, cleanse this radiation, correct it, because what happens with all these forms of radiation, from electromagnetic fields to microwaves to solar flares to ley lines in the earth, are that this is a radiation that, once again talking about the DNA, but also the actual molecules of your body spin in the wrong direction. I mean, basically, this is about polarity. And so you are not polarized. Your auras do not spin correctly around you. Your chakras do not spin correctly. Well, how are we supposed to not have war, let alone an interpersonal relationship, if your chakras are all messed up?
Wow.
And so your DNA is affected by this. The molecules of your body spinning, so the north and south of the atoms are lined up incorrectly. So the spray is to correct all of this stuff. And I once, many years ago, went to a healer and took some of my students to a healer. We were, visiting different people, looking at different modalities. This very interesting man worked with magnets. I don't remember his name right now. It's very interesting work. He was doing some great stuff quite a while ago. And so he was going to demonstrate on me. And he started to work on me, and he was like, wait, it's not working. And I said, well, explain to us what you're doing. He said, well, what I do is I pull, and you may do this in meditation. I do this with my students in meditation. We use this sort of circuit that we have naturally with the earth, like an electrical circuit, and energy flows up from the earth into one side of your body and out the other side and down, and yada, yada, yada. To me, it's second nature. I've been doing this for so long. Well, this man's work was based on a similar kind of idea, but using magnets instead of meditation. And he had some great effects with people. And when he tried to do it on me, he was like, but wait, nothing's happening. And I was like, well, so he explained it. I said, well, you've got to switch over to the foot, to the right foot, not the left foot. And he was like, well, theoretically that's true, but I've never encountered a person that it actually was real for. I said, because nobody has their polarity correct. And going to a quote-unquote polarity healer can make it even worse. I'm nothing against other healers. I always, try to be respectful of other people's work. But I used to get people all the time that went to a polarity healer and were so messed up. They couldn't walk, they couldn't drive. They were. It's just very screwy with your whole brain psyche kind of thing.
Right.
But yes, but I said, I've been meditating like this for years and years and years and years. And he said, well, it's doing something. He put it on my right foot, and instantly everything was gone. He said, now you also clear faster than anybody else.
Wow.
But
well, it's interesting you should mention that, because I've been doing a lot of research on the polarities within the body and magnetism, and just recently discovered something for myself that I've started based on the research of Andrew Norton Weber, which has to do with distilled water therapy or liquid therapies. And a few weeks ago I started drinking a gallon a day of distilled water, and it literally is pulling all the negatively charged material and inorganic minerals out of the pineal gland and the various glands. And I'm finding that my senses are opening up again. And it can be, like you said, it can be done in a variety of ways, but you have to be very careful to know that the person who's doing it is conscious of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it isn't just doing it by rote.
Exactly. Because
very good.
It's like getting a facelift. You don't want to go to somebody that's just had their first, let's try this out on you. No,
right.
Sorry.
Right. Facelift.
You don't want to be doing that.
No, I don't personally.
So,
not that I haven't had some surgical corrections due to a major accident that almost took my face off, but it also managed to reduce my bulbous nose that I'd been self-conscious of as a child to a nice petite little Filipino nose, like one of the Aquinos.
So God works in mysterious ways.
Exactly. Tragedies are everything in our life is woven into it as a teaching tool and a lesson, and it's just us that needs to step up to the plate with consciousness and that whole thing. As we've been talking about. Speaking of consciousness, and I want to ask you more about your essences, so don't forget, I want to ask you about how you came up with them. But on consciousness, do you feel that the consciousness of the artist and the spiritual connection is really a cosmic expression that begins to affect people in the same way, even if they're not conscious, that there are differences in gradations of the effect of the